Well, hello there. I am Coach Dana Spencer, and welcome to the Dana Spencer Show, where we talk about solving problems, building relationships, quitting corporate, and the freedom to walk in our God given purpose. And I'm super excited today. I have an amazing guest with us today, and we're just going to dive all into his business today. So, welcome to the Dana Spencer Show, Alonzo Avents. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you, Dana. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, Oh, for sure. No, I appreciate you. So, just to jump right in, tell us how your path was able to cross with real estate investing.
Okay, this is a good one here. So, I'm born and raised in Portsmouth, Virginia. If you guys have never heard of the area before, it's called Seven Cities, Hampton Roads. It's on the coast, Virginia Beach, right? But I'm from Portsmouth, and I was raised in less than favorable conditions. I'll put it that way, right? So as I got a little older, and I got blessed through a connection with my brother to land what you would call a quote unquote good job, right? So um, working, yeah, right, a good job, if that even exists, right? So anyway, so I'm working at this job, which is Newport News Shipyard, shipbuilding. Um, I still got a lot of friends that actually still work there, so shout out to y'all if anybody hears it. But working that job, I was still broke, and I was pissed because I was still broke. And it was around the time I started in, let's see, the fall of 2008, which is right around the time stuff started going haywire with real estate. So of course, a lot of people are talking about it, um, and I was just trying to figure out how to earn more money, right? And I didn't. My parents never owned their own home; they were always renters. And my brother was renting at the time, and I was staying with him. And I was like, "Look, I want my own place. I want my own spot." And I was still broke, right? So the way it worked out was I was laying on the couch after work one day, and one of those infomercials popped up, right? And it hit all the pain points, all the perfect pain points for me. And I was like, I'm going to this seminar. So I went to this free seminar. It was called Riches at the time. It was one day free one. I went to it, got a book called Richest Man in Babylon. So if you've never read that book, check that book out. You can actually download the PDF for free online on Google. Um, got that book, and I decided I was going to buy this course, even though I didn't have the money to do it. It's $500 for a weekend course. So I did it, and I went, and I started to learn more about money, finances that I didn't know. So I know a lot of people talk about. There's a lot of bad talk about seminars and stuff like that. For somebody like me, it worked. It helped, right? It gave me a different level of exposure that I didn't have before. So in that course, they talked about the different ways to earn passive income. And by the end of that course, I knew that's what I wanted, right? And it gave you three different avenues. It said business ownership, real estate, or portfolio income. And for portfolio, it's like you need money to go into the portfolio. So in order to buy these assets, you need the money, right? Business you can build from scratch. It takes a little less money. However, you need some sort of skill to put into the marketplace. And at the time, I worked as a radiation protection technician, which I didn't know how I could take that as my own personal business and monetize it, right? So real estate was something that I was very interested in because I wanted to own my own home, but I still didn't really know how to, and I couldn't afford their coaching program because with those seminars, it was an upsell, right? At the end of it, the bottom package was like 14,000 up to like 40,000. I didn't have that money, right? So I went up to the people who were doing the seminar. I was like, look, I don't have that. I don't have a way to get in that money. I called the credit card companies. They're not giving me that. Right. So my credit score is like a 520 at this point. They're not giving me that money. So what can I do to start right now? And the person, praise God, man, I asked the right person. The young lady told me, she's like, if you've never heard of a RIA, like it's called the Real Estate Investment Association. It's a national group, but they have local chapters that you can plug into. I would start there. So that's what I did. I plugged into the RIA, which was actually at that time, um, let's see, it was PRIA, Peninsula Real Estate Investment Association. There's two of them. There's TRIG also, Tidewater Real Estate Investment Group. But I went to PRIA because I was on that side of the water and got connected with local investors. And speaking with the brothers there, um, ladies and gentlemen, it was all walks of life in there. And if you don't know what a RIA is, any kind of profession you can think in real estate, they're all there. From janitors, people who would cleaning services, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, attorneys, investors, agents, brokers, if you name it, they meet there at your local chapter. And I got connected with some investors, and he suggested Charles P. Edwards III and then another gentleman, Skip Saylor. When I spoke to them one on one, they both suggested, look, if I were in your shoes, at the time I was 21, 22, it's like, look, if I were in your shoes and I wanted to get involved in real estate, I would start with multifamily. And here are the reasons why, right? So they gave me a list of reasons. Um, and long story short is I just did what they told me to do. So when I went to buy my first property, I bought a duplex. And of course, there's a journey in between there with me figuring out how to get the money for a down payment, right? Getting my credit to a place to where I could get the loan, getting connected with a real estate agent. There were a lot of details I kind of breezed over just now, but just keep in mind that through connecting with this RIA, right? I went ahead and I bought my first property, which was a duplex, and I closed on it in 2012. And lived in half of it, rented the other half out, and that was the beginning of my real estate journey. I apologize for the long answer, but that's how it panned out. Yeah.
No, yeah, I love that because a lot. So, first of all, I have been to Newport News, Virginia.
Nice, nice.
So my aunt who married into the family, my favorite aunt, she lived in Newport News and I went to go visit her for a summer. So
Okay.
I totally know exactly where that's at. So super cool.
Nice.
And the duplex. So okay, so this is interesting because a lot of people are indifferent. Some people say even if your goal is to purchase multifamily, that you should still start with single so that you can, get the basics down. But I love the advice that you received at the local RIA was to just get multifamily. So in terms
Yeah.
of the duplex and what you all may have heard, this is called house hacking, what he has done, buying a duplex, living in one unit, and then renting out the second unit. So, and I recommend this strategy for college students. And you said about in your 20s at this time.
Yep. Yep.
So, perfect for getting your toe wet in terms of getting started investing in real estate. So, with this duplex, was unit number two, the other unit, was it able to pay for all of your expenses?
Yeah. So my mortgage on that property was 1036.60, $1,036.60, and the rent on the other side, I rented it out for $1,050. So
Sweet.
I was in the green or the black. You would say I was in the black $13.40 a month. So I took my living expense, it was completely eliminated, and I had another $13 or $14 a month coming back to me before I got a property manager. So the first tenant I did myself, right? And it was actually a coworker who moved in, and I bought a property in the hood where I'm from. So you know, that's in the wind as well. But the house got broke into, they got scared, they moved out, somebody else moved in, and I was like, I need a property manager, right? Because of course, I was hiring out because I didn't have the technical skills to fix the roof, the ceiling, because we had a water issue, ceiling fell in. Like, you're going to get those type of things happen, right? But since I didn't have the skills, I hired a property manager, and I was tired of getting a call. What really sparked it for me was I was actually out to dinner with my wife at the time, and I got a call from the tenant. It was like, "Hey, such and such happened." It was something really minor. I don't remember what it was, but when I got the call, it pissed me off enough till I was like, "Yeah, I didn't get into rental properties so that I could be working when I'm off, right?" And I know a lot of people, and it just depends on the type of lifestyle you want and why you get into real estate. Like, you have to get, and let me go there real quick. You got to be crystal clear on what you want out of real estate and what the purpose of it is before you go into it. Because one, it'll determine the type of deal you get into, and it'll also determine what deal makes sense and what doesn't. And then two, it'll guide you in your decision making when you're making decisions, not just on the type of property or what have you, but also just helping you live the life that you really want to live. So when I got that phone call, what I was looking for was passive income, right? I wasn't looking to keep getting these calls and working, right? So when he got the phone call, I was like, look, I'm trying to enjoy dinner with my wife, right? I got to get rid of this because I can't keep getting these phone calls and then I got my attention's drawn away from where I actually want to be. So that's when I really decided, look, I need a property manager. And then also a family member moved in. And I was like, yeah, I really, really need to put a layer in between myself and them because I love the relationship and I want to keep the relationship. Money can't be a problem in the relationship. So I need to add another layer there. So that's when I leveraged a property manager. And if you don't mind, I just want to. I think it's interesting that people are being advised to start a single family to get the basics down. I think that's interesting, and the reason is because a single family property, like if it's yours, right? It's a liability. It's not an asset. And I know that's the people will try to debate it up and down, but I love Robert Kiyosaki, right? That's who I started to really hone in on and read their book, especially earlier on when I first started investing and was getting introduced. The mindset, I love it because if it's not putting money in my pocket, it's a liability, period. So your own home, you're paying for that. No one else is paying that mortgage. You're not renting that out unless you're renting a room or something like that in the house. That'll put a little bit of money in your pocket, reduce your living expenses. But when it comes to buying a single family house first, it it limits your growth potential, right? And when I say growth, what I should say is it's you don't scale as fast. And for the example, by buying a duplex, one side rented out, I lived in the other side. A month later, I called the same uh, what's the loan officer that I dealt with before, and out of curiosity, I asked him, look, how much would I get approved for if I were to apply for another loan right now? And at the time I was making, my salary was around 40 some thousand, 42, $43,000. After overtime, I was making somewhere between 65 and 72, right? Working my butt off at the shipyard. But that's a whole nother story. But when I first got qualified for the loan, I want to say the most they said I qualified for was like 180, 190,000, somewhere up in that frame. I was like, look, I need my mortgage to be $1,000. I can't pay more than that. And that's a tip if you haven't bought your first place, is decide on how much you can afford. Don't let somebody else tell you this is what you can afford. You just look, this is what I'm comfortable with paying monthly. I need to get approved for this. How much more, what will that buy me? I don't want to know the max I can get approved for because the max is gonna break you, right? So yeah. So once once I called them and found out how much I would get approved for after I closed on that duplex and had it rented out, he was like, how do you get you approved for about $400,000? I was making 60,000, 70,000 at the time. He's like, but based on he's like, if you were to let this go long enough, because they don't count the income immediately, 2 years of tax returns, right, of income before they'll actually count that money towards what you can get approved for on a loan. There's a lot of red tape, right? But if I were to let that go for 2 years, got that income coming in, and he was like, if you rented the other side out, I wouldn't have any issues with getting you approved for $400,000. So I would have been able at that time to, okay, now I can move out of this duplex and buy a 3 unit, 4 unit. I can still leverage FHA, right? Because FHA will do up to 4 units. This is key stuff here. I can still leverage that, go in with 3.5%, get another property, rent the other side out, and now I can have somewhere between 2 and 5 units rented, and I would still have a place to live, right? Now I didn't do that, and it's because I got sidetracked, right? However, I will let you know that to scale, if real estate is definitely where you want to go, even if you're not even sure, I would start with a 2 unit, 3 unit, 4 unit property, leverage a professional property manager. That way the headache is off of you. And now you're building equity on the back end, right? Your living expenses are come down just from closing. Come on, man. This thing is so powerful that when I bought this property, I don't know if, in case you didn't catch it before, in my apartment, I was paying like 950 a month after utilities. It was right around 1100 a month for this apartment I was living in. I moved into the duplex. 1036.60 is the mortgage now, right? $86.60 higher than what my rent was, but now the rent is 250 that I'm bringing in. Living expense, rent, mortgage eliminated. Now I got to pay for utilities, right? So not only was my money monthly, did it get bigger, but now my net worth went up because now I have equity in the property. I bought the property for 90,000. We fixed it up for about, what was it? We budgeted 38,000, 40,000. After it was all said and done, we was in for 128,000 and change. Let's say 128.8, right? Mortgage was 1036.60. The appraisal was at 180 when I first bought it, right? Now, so I had equity in the property. Living expenses are eliminated. I completely changed my financial picture with the one move. And out of pocket, it cost me less than $4,000 because
Oh,
I leveraged FHA, right? 3.5% down. The seller paid closing costs. It was a bank owned property, which is a REO, right? So a move that simple can really change the trajectory of your financial picture. Now imagine staying on course after doing that one time, you do it another time, right? And we can later on, I guess later on in the call, we can get a little bit more into some of the deals I've done or do recently. But for first time home buyers, man, please, hey, and this ain't something I made up. I listened to Charles P. Edwards III and Mr. Skip Saylor. They set me down as like, look, this is where I would start. And I said, yes, sir. I'll start there. And it's been a blessing. Yeah.
wow. That is awesome to hear because I've been encouraging people to buy a duplex, especially those who want to know what to do in order to get started. That's the first thing that I suggest to them is to get a duplex. And you
Yeah.
actually did that. And so I love when you said the max is going to break you. I love that because I recently had a conversation with a lady who they were married and so they just lived off of the one person's salary and save the other one. Why is it? And I don't want to derail the conversation, but I do want to ask this. Why is it as Black people, we feel like we have to spend everything in the month instead of even with your being able to recognize this, just because the bank and you stop the bank. I love that you stop the bank and say, you know what? No, I don't even want to hear what I can
For sure.
qualify for. I can afford $1,000 a month. What will that get me? I love that. So
Yeah.
why are we such consumers instead of producers and just making smart strategic moves with our money?
You know, there's a lot of different reasons for that. And as we're both certified extreme execution coaches, right? And we know the personalities that people have play a role in that because some people are more concerned about an experience versus a result that they actually want to get. And it's easy for them to get derailed. I'm thankful that I was blessed to make that type of he wired me that kind of way to look at things that kind of way, right? But he also had me humble enough that I would listen to someone else's input because I knew I didn't know what I was doing. And typically, somebody with my type of personality style doesn't want to listen to other. We want to do things our own way, right? But in that time, in that space, I was very humble, and I knew that these people knew what I didn't know. So I listened, and I did it, and it paid off, and I praise God and them for it, for sure. So most of us also conditioning, like our financial education comes from what we see. So we have a formal, what I like to call a formal education, what we go to school to learn. They don't teach us about money in school, right? So what we learn about money is implicit. And when I say implicit, what I mean is we pick it up informally by not by osmosis, but just from our environment and what I see, basically what we see in our household and the people that we pay attention to. Because as children and as adults, we heap We heap masters unto ourselves. That's what the Bible says. I got to take it there sometimes, but we heap masters unto ourselves or teachers unto ourselves. So who we watch and who we pay attention to is ultimately what we'll learn and how we'll learn. So if we are just in our home environment and we see our parents do this or that, and they never talk to us and tell us what's going on with finances, then we're going to assume we know,
Mhm.
and we may or may not ask. And then we'll also be looking at aunts, uncles, friends, whomever else is around you, and we'll kind of put our own thing together, right? So what we learned is implicit. It was based off what we saw, what we think we knew, and then we just operate in that. And it's important to understand that we do that not just in money, but in relationships, in our religion, right? In our investing, in our businesses, at our jobs. Like that's what we do as human beings. So when you recognize that and you leverage it, right, and say, look, you know what? I really don't know what I'm doing. And then you seek that, right? Seeking you shall find. You go off and you seek what you want. Nothing can stop you from there because he said, ask and you shall receive, right? So as like you said, as black people, why do we want to spend all we got? Sometimes we get caught up in the experience. We want to keep up with the Joneses. Sometimes we think we know and we don't, right? We're not educated financially, and then we're not exposed to the fact that there is a such thing as financial education. And then it's like, so how do I get that? Right? When I got exposed to it, I was all in because I was like, man, everybody I know is broke and I need it. You know what I mean? I saw this dude with a yacht on the waterfront downtown Norfolk with a TV, bed, everything. And I'm walking, I can barely pay for the car payment I got outside. And I'm trying to figure out, yo, why does this guy have a yacht? And I can barely afford to treat my then girlfriend out to something to eat. It's like it was decisions. They had an education and they made different decisions. And I was like, look, I want to learn some of that because I don't like where I am and I want to get on the other side of it. So there's a lot that comes into play with it, from environment to education to, you know, our personality types to our experience, like all of that stuff comes into play. So I think for each individual, it's a little different, but I think the solution is always going to be the same: is education, discipline, right? And just awareness, taking an account of, this is where I am and this is where I want to go. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good. So when you purchased the first duplex, was that an FHA loan?
Yes, ma'am. It was.
Okay, and so then you said you could have moved out of that duplex and did it again and
Yeah.
got another FHA loan, or are you refinancing your first duplex into a conventional loan?
You could do that too. So, and hit, now that question, brought that up, this is the lesson I learned investing in what I call the hood, right? The low class area, whatever you want to call it.
And I was going to ask you that, what lessons you learned from the duplex. So you can just tie it all
Hmm.
in.
Yeah, yeah. So one of them, I told you I listened to Charles Edwards. And I listened to Skip Saylor. I didn't listen to everything they said though, because both of them told me. They asked me where I was from. I was like Portsmouth. They asked where you grew up. It's like Catamount Park. And it's like, okay, don't invest in Portsmouth. That was the first thing they told me. And I'm like, well, why wouldn't I invest in my home city? And it's like because the politicians are crooked, the taxes are the highest in the seven cities, and the education is the worst, right? And I didn't want to hear that, right? It's the only predominantly black city in the seven city area. It's 51, 52% African American population, demographic, whatever. I thought I could save the world, right? I was like, man, I want to rehab this neighborhood. That's a whole nother story. But okay, so they told me not to invest in Portsmouth. I did. I went to refinance that duplex. When I bought it from the bank, they appraised it at 180. I bought it for 90. When I went to refinance, they appraised it for 119. Right? Yep. And I was like, hold on, wait, this don't make no sense. I'm paying taxes on 140 because there's the city assessment, there's the appraised value, there's the market value, right? So I got the appraisal appeal. They appraised it for 120. I was like, man, come on, this is some bull here, like, right? So that was the lesson I learned was redlining is real. It is, and I mean, I'm sorry to say it, but it's real. Um, that was how I found out about it, and also um, I'll say it was a pain point for me, a lesson for me, and also a fire was kindled at the same time because that bleeds into a lot of other things. 'Cause I started to learn that real estate taxes dictate teachers' pay, firehouse pay, right? Road upkeep, all these public services in the city. And I started to tie all these things in. I started to learn a lot of different things at that time. And I want to try to stay on track as much as I can, right? So that's one of the lessons is choose the neighborhood, choose the area wisely. If it's specifically for money, right? Path of gentrification. If it has a lot of upward potential, that may be a good area to invest in. You can always go to the city or the county, look at their plans and see what their plans are, and pick your area that you invest in based on that. That's a good strategy so that you can see what's coming down the pipe and you'll know what areas are going to increase in value. It's not a roll of the dice. You can literally look at what the city plans are 5, 10, 15, and sometimes 20 years from now, right? So that's one of the lessons I learned with the duplex. And I apologize, Dana, but what was that? I want to make sure I get that question. What was it again?
Yeah, when you bought the duplex, if it was an FHA loan,
Yep,
and
yep.
then when you were going to buy your
Awesome.
second property, were you going to use FHA as well?
Yeah, yeah. So FHA, of course, has stipulations that you can use. How many times you can use? Not how many times. It's not a limit on how many FHA loans you can do. There's conditions around it. So first time home buyer, if you're a first time home buyer, 100% you qualify for an FHA, right? If family size changes, right, you can qualify for another FHA or change in marital status. Well, I moved in, we weren't married, we were just boyfriend, girlfriend. We got married. So at that point in time, I could say, hey, look, I need another place. I need a bigger place. Maybe this place isn't safe anymore. I got married, whatever. I can go ahead and buy another property. Now, they're not going to look at where you're buying it and all that. It's just FHA stipulations. Something I'm gonna have to mention this was something my dad used to tell us growing up. First, you learn the rules of the game, and then you play ball, right? So that's what it is. You learn the stipulations around FHA, and you leverage it as much as you can. There's pros and cons too, because with FHA, you're going to pay mortgage insurance, right? Mortgage insurance is going to raise what you're paying monthly, right? Had I done conventional on that duplex, my monthly payment would have been lower because I was under the 80% loan to value, right? Because at the time it was appraised for 180. So I was under LTV for the bank, the 80%. So they wouldn't have charged me primary mortgage insurance. So that would have saved me $120 or so a month, right? So these are all things that you may consider when you are moving forward. Sometimes all those details may not matter, and for my style, they don't always matter, right? Um, Another thing is like if you have a child, you qualify to get another FHA. If work relocates, you qualify to get another FHA, right? All these things matter. Like if you are outside a certain radius of your job and you want to move closer, but that would be something to link with a loan officer or a mortgage broker on to get all of the things that may requalify you for an FHA. And it's also on FHA. You can find it on online. Excuse me. I was just online looking at FHA stuff 2 3 months ago. But yeah, that's the answer to that question. You can definitely leverage more than one. You can have as many as you want as long as you meet the right circumstances.
Okay,
Yep.
so you bought the duplex. Now you're 128.8 in. Now it's worth 119. So now what do you do? Did you move out, and what happened next?
Okay, so I stayed there for 4 years. Let's see, we closed in 12, no, three and a half, because I moved in 2015, and we moved because my wife's mom had got diagnosed with renal failure. She was
Mhm.
going through dialysis. My wife went to NSU, Norfolk State University. She graduated with a business degree, marketing, and her mom wanted her to help her because her mom's life dream was to own the daycare. Well, she bought one, was in position to buy one right around 2015, right, same time frame, right? My wife wanted to go home. She wanted to spend time with her mom while she was still in decent health, and also she wanted to help with the daycare. So, in the span of about 4 weeks, I put my 2 weeks in on my job, found another one traveling so I could work. and we moved to South Carolina. I remember that call with my mother-in-law one night. I was on night shift, headed to work. She called me. We were talking, and while she was talking, it was like Charlie Brown, wah wah wah, 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 And I'm just looking up in the skies. I'm driving, and just a feeling came over me, and I feel like it was a spirit. It was just like, yo, just go. And I did not want to leave where I was from, but something said, just go. So, you know, I told my wife, I was like, all right, we'll move down there. We'll move. So I put my 2 weeks in, we moved. I rented the other side out. So we also reduced the rent. So instead of 1050, it's $1,000 and $1,000. So now it's bringing in 2,000. The taxes went up. So my mortgage went up from 1036.60 up to I think 1,084, somewhere up in there. So still making good money on it. After, the property manager, depending on where you are, what they charge, this one was 10% of gross rents, right? So I was paying $200 a month for the property manager to maintain the property. So I was clearing roughly 700 when maintenance wasn't due, right? We moved to South Carolina. We moved in with my in-laws because we didn't have a house down there or anything, and we moved fast, right? Um, and I kept that property until 2018, and that's when I listed it for sale. We kept having a lot of turnaround. I swapped property managers. I had a lot of turnaround with the property, and I was broke because I was traveling for work, and I wasn't getting a lot of work, right? A lot of stuff going on. So I sold the property, and when I sold it for 160,000. And at that time, yeah, at that time I owed 118, 119,000, so on up in there. So after selling the property and paying off the mortgage and all the closing costs, I ended up walking away with 24,000, 25,000, somewhere between 24 and $27,000. Which was a lump sum that I had only gotten one other time, and that was when I clear out my 401k. So I thought I was rich. I'm like, man, I got all this money. Nah, it's not a lot of not a lot of money. you know,
Probably you're a young guy like you.
yeah, it's a lot. It's like, no, it's not. It's not. Blew through that. But yeah, that's what happened with the duplex. That's how it panned out. But what's awesome about it is that it's like the lessons I got from that property and the income that it brought in as well. It's like it's still paying off for me today, and I'm thankful for it. Yeah.
Okay, so now you moved to South Carolina, you're staying with your in-laws, you're traveling a lot, working. So what's your next move?
We The next move was figuring out how to bring in more money, right? So real estate was my passion. In between there, I took a detour, and that was with network marketing business. No, not to network marketing. Found that the particular business I was in wasn't for me, right? But we was in it for about 5 years. Had I been real estate focused, I would have did what I said and bought another property. But I shifted to network marketing. Anyway, we're in South Carolina, figuring out how to make more money. I started a janitorial business while I wasn't traveling. So I would be on the road, come back home, had a janitorial business, and I decided I would do a flip, is what I wanted to do. So I bought another house down there, and I bought that property in 2017. So just before I sold the other house, I bought a single fam. Well, it was a duplex. It was a single family home. Um, was I thought was a single family home until we walked it. There was a wall in the middle, and it was being used as a duplex. And it was still efficient at being a duplex. You had everything you needed on both sides. But as a flip, I was like, I'll buy it, turn it to a single family, and resell it. So what we actually did was we bought it, we rehabbed it, and went through a lot of, man. You talking about lessons learned? I lost a lot of. I say lost. I put a lot of money into that house, um, out of my own pocket, but we live in that house now, right? So the intention was to resell it, but dynamics were changing. We had a child. It's like, look, we need our own space instead of being with the in-laws. So we moved into the house, So we're in that one now. That was supposed to be the rehab project. So that's what happened with that one. And since then, we've been buying properties in Chicago. And also, I ventured off into lending, which was kind of random, but um, also a blessing as well, which is really interesting. So I guess I'll just you want me to segue into that, or you got another question? Like, how do you want
No,
to?
go ahead and segue.
Okay. So um, basically, I was trying to figure out how to make real estate income my primary income. That has been the goal since I started, but I realized I wasn't as serious at it as I should have been, right?
Mm,
So I was like, look, what do I need to do? And then that's when I started to realize apparently I don't know something. I don't want to pay 30, 40 grand for somebody's coaching program because I had the network. I had people who were willing to help, right? But at the same time, I didn't want to listen, right? So that's another issue. But I realized, look, I just need something, right? So I actually got involved with the Make Real Estate Real course with Jamal King. And the reason I did that is because I recognized that I didn't have a team. It's like, not only do I not have a team because of my style, right? My my eye. It's like a 14, right? So I'm not an outgoing person historically, right? It's not the case now, but I needed a team. And I was like, if this program will help me build a team or has a team in place already, it's the perfect place for me. So I leveraged that program and got blessed with some good people and some not so good people as well. Just to be 100%. Um, Nothing's perfect, but through that and getting a team, at least learning more of a structure of what a team should be, we closed on a property up in Chicago as a rehab, and now I just closed on a mixed use building as well earlier this year, and I that's what I'm shifting into now is focusing on mixed use because it's they're beasts. I like them. I like them. I like them a lot. You know,
oh,
like
now
like
you're coming down my lane. Now you're coming down my lane.
for sure. So I shifted over into the mixed use buildings. Close, like I said, closed on the one on I think that was March 31st. Um, and it's a commercial space downstairs, 2,600 or so square foot, two residential units upstairs. Those are gutted. The commercial space is rented out. So we're in the process now of getting the plans approved so we can finish construction on the two residential units and get those leased out. And what attracted me to Chicago, other than the fact that there was, I was able to leverage a team of people who were already put together, was the rents and the types of prop. Like in Virginia, where I'm from, Hampton Roads, there weren't a lot of multi-family properties. You could find a duplex, triplex, fourplex here and there, but what you would pay for it, fix it up for, and what you would get for rent, it just didn't seem like it was worth it for me. And I know some people will look for $100 a door, $150 a door. I can't do that. That's for me. That's not. I don't have a lot of capital to scale that slowly. I'll put it that way, right? So I got to make the capital that I do have work very efficiently for me. So I need to be maximizing profit, right, and minimizing how much is coming out of my pocket. Long story short, which I mean is smart business for anybody, regardless of how much capital you have.
Mm,
But I found it to be best to utilize that area, right, was right around in the Midwest because there's a lot of mixed use properties. There's a lot of multi-use property, multi-family properties. They're just sitting there abandoned, vacant, that need work. It's a pain in the city side, you know. So for the type of returns I was looking for, that is an excellent area, But for some people, hey, location, crime, they whatever the case is, it scares them away or it's just not their preference. Some people prefer like A-class properties where you don't profit as much bottom line, but you have a lot less headaches as well. So that's about studying the market that you're investing in and figuring out what your risk tolerance is, what you can and can't handle, what your it goes back to the clarity, getting really clear on what you want, what you need. And for me, it's like I need the income so I can get home with my family and get off the road, right? So for right now, that's the jam for me, And then maybe that'll shift here within the next, I'll say 5 or 10 years or so. But as of right now, that's where it is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good. And that makes sense about Chicago since you were connected with Make Real Estate Real. So, how did you find out about Make Real Estate Real? Through the extreme execution process?
No, no. So that was actually through just listening to the podcast. When I started that janitorial business and I moved to Columbia, I didn't have any friends around me. I didn't know anybody in Columbia. And I was working late. Sometimes I would go in 7 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night to clean these contracts. And again, not the most social person. So I wasn't going out. I was home and I was on either on the road home or building a business. That was it. So I was like, you know what? I need something that I can listen to that's positive, right? So I was looking for something. And while I was in that network marketing business, Eric Thomas came and spoke for that network marketing company.
Ah,
Yeah. And my wife had been telling me about him. I wouldn't listen to him because I was like, man, he be yelling all the time. I ain't got no time for that, right? That's what it was at first. But when he came, and I'm wide open today, right? So I heard first Tony Robbins came, and when Tony Robbins came, after he finished, like I was like, man, it's some good information, but after he finished, like my spirit didn't feel, my spirit felt really heavy, And I'm not I would tell people I'm not like a crazy spiritual person. I am ordained as a pastor, but it's like, yo, look, as far as people seeing spirits and all that, that's not me. But when he finished, I felt heavy on my spirit, like after seeing him in person. And I was like, yeah, something's just off. Something don't feel right about this. Right. Next year, Eric Thomas came in, and I was like, yo, I don't know who this dude is, but this grown man walking up on stage crying. This was, 2013 or 14. And it was like a grown man walk up on stage crying, like, man, you saved my life. And by the time I finished seeing him speak, I was like, I don't know who he is, but that's it right there. And I just remember thinking that. And so fast forward 5 years later, 4 or 5 years later, I'm trying to figure out something I can listen to that's positive, geared towards entrepreneurship and positive thinking, that sort of thing. So I dialed into the Secret to Success podcast, and I was consistently listening to it while I was cleaning contracts. I'll be in there by myself cleaning up and listening to the podcast. And then Jamal King came on the podcast, and that's how I got learned of Make Real Estate Real. Yep.
right. Yeah. And so, are you in Columbia now still?
I live in Columbia, South Carolina, in that house still. Um, but right now I'm in Dayton, Tennessee. So I travel as a radiation protection technician. I work at the nuclear plants now. First, I started off in the shipyard, and then I went DOE very briefly because they scared me. And now I'm working commercially at the nuclear power plants, and I've been out here. Typically, I'll stay in a place somewhere between 30 and 60 days. I've been here for almost 3 years now, so we live in both places. I'm back and forth between Columbia and the plant is in Spring City, but I have an apartment here in Dayton. Yeah.
Okay. And so, is your family there with you in Dayton?
Yeah, they're back. She's back and forth. My family and now two sons, they were here the entire time until my second son was born, Callan. He was born in October, and I didn't want my wife the in the apartment. Not much of a support system in the middle of the valley. So I was like, look, y'all stay home, and I'll just travel back and forth. But you know, when the schedule picks up, they come home, well, come here with me, excuse me. As a matter of fact, Monday is when they'll be back, and we'll just be hanging out here in Tennessee for a while. Yeah.
So, what makes you curious or interested about the mixed use commercial? Like, how did you get into just wanting to dive more into that particular product?
So the general contractor, project manager that I worked with on the first rehab I started in Chicago, Purdue Carter, right? As I was going and meeting him and walking the property, I was like, look, this rehab is cool. That's cool stuff. But my goal is passive income, not flipping properties. For me, that's a job. Is I mean, if you get the team in place, it goes a lot smoother, but at the end of the day, there's activity involved. There's a good bit of activity involved. And I was like, real estate is supposed to be a passive income for me, so I can step away. Going back to getting that call while I was with my wife, right? It's the money that I need to take care of my job income, so I can go home and do what really matters, which is focus on ministry and raise my family, right? That's that's the transition. So I was talking to Purdue. I was like, look, this the rehab is good, but the only reason I'm doing it is for capital so that I can get larger multifamily properties instead of doing two, three, four. I was thinking 7, 12, 15 units, right? And Purdue was like, look, I used to do that, but I like commercial properties now. And I was like, well, why? And then he gave me an example. And he's a broker. He has a brokerage in Chicago, and a very successful brokerage, and he's also a real estate investor. But he's like, look, man, and if you listen to this, you're getting game for free. You're getting game for free, so you better thank Dana for this. Um, so he's like, look, I took a property, a mixed use building, and no, this one was a commercial building, and he was like, the guy wanted for at least $2,500 a month. That's all they was asking for this whole building. And he was like, I needed a place for my brokerage, so I leased it out. And he was like, it was a big place. He was like, so what I did was I took part of the space and I built that out for my brokerage, right? And I run my brokerage out of that one spot, and I turned the rest of the building into commercial suites. He was like, I made 10 grand off that one property where he was gonna lease it for 2,500. And I
Mm.
was like, man, that makes a lot of sense, right? I was like, but that makes all the sense in the world. And then specifically, different states will have different tenant landlord laws. Some states tend to be more tenant friendly, some more landlord friendly. Illinois, more tenant friendly, right? So he was like, evictions get it really expensive. Turnover is horrible. It costs a lot of time and a lot of money. And he was like, I just didn't have the patience to keep dealing with that. Whereas in a commercial space, nobody cares if you evict a business. It's like if you evict a business, you can have them gone in 30 days and turn the property around with no problem. But tenants, especially with the moratorium we just had with COVID and all that, people were having properties that people weren't paying for and they couldn't evict the tenant, right? So he was like, man, the commercial space is like where it is for me. And then he was like, look, since you asked that, I think I'm gonna put a course to he made a course just because I asked that question. It was funny. And
Wow.
then I so he gave me game and then I had to pay for it, you know. So I paid for the course, and there was maybe 20 people or so that paid for the course, you know, which is crazy to me. But anyway, within the course, he was just talking about different types of strategies to invest in the mixed use properties. And then when I saw I can purchase one or I can lease it out and get the same type of returns, I was like, okay, this makes sense. This makes sense, you know. So I bought one, and praise God for it. Praise God for it. The numbers are beautiful, you know. They're beautiful, man. And it's just like, look, this is a good way to get me to where I need to be, and then I can kind of take account, take inventory, and figure out, right? Do I want to continue to stay in this same type of asset class or a property, or do I want to pivot into another one and diversify? Like, yeah. So that's how I got into the mixed use buildings. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And so with the mixed use, like there's so much you can do with it, right? And I love the point about the tenant, especially if you're in a state that is tenant friendly and not wanting to evict. There's so many layers to that.
Yeah.
But with a business, it's easy because chances are if they can't afford the rent, they want to go anyway. They want out of it. They decided to have a bakery. It's not mathing out. So they want out. So they'll probably leave before the 30 days is up because they need to go. They know that. So I love that. That is a great point. So is your mixed use building in Chicago or
Yep.
Columbia? Where is it at? In Chicago?
It's in Chicago. Yeah. I've been looking for a mixed use building in Columbia because what I want to do now is for the minute I was like, look, I'm still learning, but I've learned real estate investing to the point where I can execute on it, right? And I was like, what I want to do is do that for the ministry as well and have a better source of income because people don't always Like I don't have like a physical church as of right now. Everything's online, right? So people see a cash app flash up on the screen. They ain't sending no money to that thing, you know. That's just it. It ain't happening, but it costs money. I'm paying for everything out of my own pocket, and I was like, look, I need to figure out a way to bring in income for the ministry. And I was like, well, I can invest in real estate for for him. Like if I can do it for me, I can do it for him. So my idea was to do a mixed use building in Columbia. That way I could have a space, just one space for that I could run the church out of, lease the rest of the spaces out, and then I would also provide income for the ministry. So I started to look around in Columbia, and that's when I started to realize how rare those types of properties were in Columbia. But a restaurant that we used to like to go to, they left and they closed down, and that space is for lease, and that one would work. Um, However, I'm not ready to execute on it quite yet. You know, so the focus right now is to get home because it's like while I can start that project for the ministry at home, I spend more time in Tennessee than I'm there. And at the end of the day, I need to be home. So it's like let me keep the main thing right now, which is getting what I need so we can get home and stay there, right? And from there, you know, we can do other things, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
So my nephew is stationed at Shaw Air Force Base in
Okay.
Sumter, South Carolina. And when I was there, you always have your real estate hat on. It's always there. So I'm driving around, and um, his first child was born January 1st. So no, January 13th, 2022. And now they just had a baby.
Yeah.
So, two precious little girls, and obviously we're gonna want to visit there on a regular basis. And
Yeah.
so, the few times that we've gone there and stayed in a hotel, I'm like, I can't keep paying for a hotel when I know better. Like looking for a property, to your point, a duplex where one side can be a
Yep.
short-term rental, the other side can be a long-term rental, and then we just block off the times when we
Yep.
want to go there and visit. So just
Hmm.
so many, once you invest in one property, once you do it one time, it like opens your mind to like all these opportunities. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable. And so I was asking his fiance, I was like, because she was saying that she worked at a daycare before, and I was like, what are your thoughts on running a daycare? She was like, no, I wouldn't want to do it. I mean, so I'm just trying to think of ideas that other people will want to do and potentially work with them, especially your family.
Yeah. Yeah. For
So
sure.
yeah. So in
I
terms
feel
of
that.
your next move, the goal is to get a mixed use where you can have the church as well as real estate in Columbia. Is
That
that
won't be
right?
the next. No, the next one will be another mixed use in Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah, that's going to be the next one because I need some more income before I can go home. Right, into one being the next mixed use building, the next property, and then the other one being getting the coaching business officially launched. Right, because initially it was going to be all passive income, and I was like, look, if I can mix this up with some earned income, I just need to get home. I need to get this goal done as efficiently as possible. So it's full steam ahead on that goal for me.
And what do
Yeah.
you think since you're an ordained pastor, what do you think about this? Because I've been wanting to run this by, a pastor because here's the thing. We serve an abundant God. But yet
Mhm.
as a church, we have this thing about, okay, money is the root of all evil. However, it takes money for ministry. So what if in our churches, my pastor talks a lot about God has given us what we need inside of the church. So chances are you have people who are contractors and electricians and plumbers inside of the church. Why don't we start creating teams? Because you talked about teams. Why don't we start creating teams within our church to help with funding the ministry from real estate?
Let me make sure I understand you clearly. You said, why don't we have teams within the church to start funding real estate deals through the ministry? Is that what you're saying?
So, for example, creating teams within our church, chances are we got a little old widow or somebody who's sitting on some money, right?
Okay. Okay.
And then we have other professionals within our church. We need to have more networking events within our church because we don't even know what the person who sits
It
across
does
the
well.
pew does.
Yeah.
So networking events within our church so we can understand what everybody does, what skill sets everybody has. There's project managers in our church. Like I said, there's all kind of professionals as it relates
Yeah.
to housing in our church. So why can't we create teams within our church that we, buy a mixed use commercial property and fix it up, renovate it. We can keep it for passive income to go to a specific ministry within the church, or we can fix it up, sell it, and the profits go to the church for some sort of specific ministry. Why aren't we
Yeah.
doing more activities like that inside of our churches?
I can tell you that that is my intention with soul ministry. And the reason why I saw it that way is because I'm investing in real estate. And then I got ordained as a pastor. And I was like, he gifted me and gave me these things for a reason, right? And if the ministry needs income or money, the only way I can get it in there is the ways I know how, right? And I can learn other ways as well, but I got to go with what I know. So the first thing I know, right, that I don't have to keep working and to bring in income is passive income from real estate, right? So for me, it's full steam ahead on that. Now, I think for others, it's just that the same reason I am doing it. It's the same reason they aren't. It's because they don't know it, right? Like
Mm,
they bring in income for the ministry the way they know how, and that's through tithes and offerings, right? I mean, they're educated on how to run a church based on whatever structure they were raised in or brought up in. So they'll fish fries, car washes, you know what I mean? That's the kind of stuff that we're used to seeing. So if we don't expand the way you can't have a better output than what the inputs are,
mm.
right? Unless you take time to reflect and put your own head on, right? But if you just go with what you know, that's the result you're going to get. It would take somebody like yourself, right? Maybe cuff them by the collar and be like, look here. Now listen, this is what I'm doing and this is what it can do for the ministry. Like it takes pioneers to do that type of thing. But I believe that is a really great way to go, a really great direction to go. And it just personally on the church bit, churches are communities. That's the thing. Like when they were put together, it was put together as a community. Even the first church in Acts when they were working through how to do it. Like they all came together, sold their possessions, and distributed them evenly. And I was like, I don't think church finna do nothing like that today. But like you figure it out. Like you figure it out. You make it work. So everybody brings their talents, their gifts, right? And as a body, because now we're all a piece of that body. Now we make this thing work out the best way we can and bring glory to the Father. And I believe we've gotten used to a specific way of doing things through tradition um, that sometimes can hinder it can hinder creative thought.
Yeah.
But for somebody like yourself, you got to hey, look, this is whatever church it is you're going to, and sometimes, and this is okay. So I'm learning this lesson as well in another group I'm involved in is um, when you're the one with the idea, that means you're the one with the responsibility,
Oh,
right?
that's a bar. Ah,
Yeah. So, and I took this, I put that on myself because I was like, and I've said it to other people before as well, but I was like, all right, now I got to I got to take my own medicine now because I'm reaching out and I'm trying to get this person to help or that person to help or this person to see this or that person to see that. And it's like, but it wasn't their idea. So how can I expect them to see or think or want to or be a part of or donate their time because that it takes a lot of time now. Let's be real. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort when it was my idea, right? So it's like, no, now I gotta make this rubber meet the road. And eventually, when people see the vision, then they'll start to jump on board. But at the end of the day, if it was your idea, it's your responsibility. Yeah.
oh, you just don't know how both of those statements, like it hit me dead in my spirit, right? Because I've just been like, we cannot keep acting like we serve a broke God. Like we cannot
Amen.
keep
Amen to that.
acting. And I want to get into more churches and get my book into more churches and open their mind. So I am receiving that challenge. I definitely am receiving that. So if we want to put, this has been an amazing conversation. I could talk to you all day, but if we wanted to put a bow on this conversation, what would be the one thing that you would want the listeners to walk away from this particular episode?
Um, that you said one thing. When I start talking, it might not be one thing. So
It's
let me.
okay. I won't hold you to it.
All right, yeah, I want to preface that. The first thing I would say, man, is if you're listening to this, you're either just associated with Dana, or you call whenever you want to support, or you're really interested in real estate. Embrace that. Understand that whatever you thought you can do, you can, and just figure out what you want. Get clear on it and do it. Right? That like don't get in your own way. Right? I'm from Port and I'm from Portsmouth, Virginia, poorly educated city in Virginia. Like I love my city to life. I didn't come from a significant education or significant background or nothing like that. It was simply I was pissed and I was sick and tired of my scenario, right? So I saw something that I thought might help and I stepped out there and I learned. That's it. And yep, initially it was free. Then it cost me $500 for that weekend course. And then Priya was free. I didn't have to pay to join it. I had to pay $12 for the buffet whenever I went to the meetings. Right? Like there's a way you can meet someone in your area or in your circle that can help you make the next decision and the next step. It's about committing to the fact that you know you want to do it, right? You give it, you put it in his hands, right? It's gonna work out. So just understand you can do it for sure. And with that, financial education. Get a financial education. Understand more about how or what money is, because money ain't what we think it is anymore today. Like it's completely changed. So learn what money is. However you learn about your financial education. My personal go-tos started with Robert Kiyosaki, um, his book Rich Dad Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant, Second Chance, and then Start Your Own Corporation by Garrett Sutton. Run Your Own Corporation. Um, all of those books helped me. Richest Man in Babylon was another one that helped. Four Green Houses, One Red Hotel was another one that really brought light to what money is, right? Then there's G. Edward Griffin, The Creature from Jekyll Island. Chime into that. Listen to it on YouTube if you don't want to read the book. It's actually American history. Check that out. Um, be really cautious of who you listen to. In every scenario, in every facet of life, whether it's money, whether it's religion, whether it's a skill set, whether no matter what it is, be really, really discerning of who you listen to because what goes in comes out, right? So, man, just hear this. Like, and I know everybody, I don't know if everybody listening to this is a Christian or not, but I don't even care. Like,
Yeah.
in the end times, people will heap unto themselves masters, anything that can itch their ears, right? Like anything you want to know or learn, you can listen to it today. So you got to be really intentional and careful about who you listen to. And that's why, personally, I've come to be more engaged in Eric Thomas's community because I was listening to him and I felt the spirit. You try the spirit by the spirit. You can feel that thing, right? And the fruits that come from it. I was like, okay, this is a good route here. Anyway, just be cautious of who you listen to. Make sure you can learn whatever you want to learn, just as long as you try, and just understand that whatever you want to do, you can do it. Yeah. But real estate, multifamily, especially if it's your first if it's your first one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was so good. And I too was angered as a result. And the Bible even teaches us, be ye angry and sin not. So there
Yes, ma'am.
is constructive anger. And Rich Dad
Oh
Poor
yeah.
Dad was one of the first books that really made me angry in terms of reading the fact that the middle class pay the most in taxes. You know, we were all excited about once we got to the middle class. Yeah, I'm middle class, I'm middle class.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
wait a minute.
Yep.
So, yeah. So, whatever it is, I hope you were able to get angry as a result of this episode, but a good anger to motivate you to Get started
Absolutely.
investing in real estate
Yep.
to get to that passive income so that you can do your God given purpose. That's what the big picture is. Real estate is the tool, it's the avenue that will get you to getting the passive income so that now, because you have that income, you can now walk in your God given purpose. So, thank you so much, Alonzo, for
You're
joining us
welcome.
here
You're
today
welcome. Thank
on
you for
the
having me.
Dana Spencer Show. So, we'll have to make sure we check in with you with that mixed use commercial because I'm super excited to hear, what that
Appreciate it.
ends up, how that ends up doing for you, as well as your church, because we're speaking that into existence. Your church being
Praise God.
in Columbia in the next couple of years, whether it's mixed use commercial, whether the Lord blesses you with a building, however He chooses to bless you, we are receiving that today.
I appreciate that. Yeah. And thanks for having
Awesome.
me again. Yep.
Oh, for sure.
Yep.
And until next time on the Dana Spencer Show, go out there and be amazing on purpose.